Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Sometimes we get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of, well, everything, that we forget to slow down and just think.
It's true, we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation. It's easy to get swept away in it all.
Exactly, and that's why today we're taking a deep dive into the power of reflection.
I like it. Reflection often gets brushed aside as some new age fad, but it's far more than that.
Right, at first I thought, reflection, isn't that just, thinking? But researching this, I realized it's a much more active and purposeful process. It's about asking those tough questions about our experiences and really digging into what they mean.
It's like the difference between looking at a beautiful view and actually painting it. One is passive observation, the other is actively engaging with and processing what you're seeing, turning it into something new.
That's a great analogy. So it's not just letting thoughts drift by, it's about grabbing the important ones and dissecting them, right?
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens. It's in that active questioning, that digging deeper, that we uncover those aha moments, those insights that can shift our perspective and lead to real growth and change.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, imagine you're watching a movie, right? You enjoy the plot, the characters, but then you sit down with a friend who's a total film buff, and they point out all these layers and details you never even considered. Suddenly, you see the entire movie in a whole new light.
Okay, I'm with you. I love doing that. So reflection is like having that insightful conversation, but with yourself about your own life.
Exactly. It's about taking those experiences, those movies of our lives, and analyzing them to uncover the hidden messages and meanings. And those insights, those ahas, are incredibly powerful.
Okay, I'm convinced reflection is definitely more than just daydreaming. But now I'm curious, why should we care? What's the payoff for all this introspection?
We're not just talking about some vague sense of self-improvement here. We're talking tangible benefits that you can experience in everyday life.
All right then, hit me with the benefits.
Let's start with self-awareness. Most of us, we go through life on autopilot, right? But reflection forces you to hit pause and ask why. Why am I reacting this way? What's motivating this choice? It's like holding up a mirror to your own motivations, your patterns, even those not so glamorous parts we all have.
So understanding ourselves better, that's got to have some ripple effects, right?
Absolutely. Better self-awareness naturally leads to better decision-making. We all make mistakes. It's part of being human. But it's reflecting on those mistakes, understanding the why behind our choices. That helps us make different, hopefully better decisions next time.
Instead of being doomed to repeat those mistakes.
Precisely. And speaking of moving forward, that brings us to another major benefit, personal growth. We all have areas we want to improve, right? But without reflection, it's like wandering around in the dark. Reflection shines a light on those areas and helps us understand how to grow.
So less wishing and hoping, more strategizing and taking action.
Exactly. And here's a big one, especially these days. Stress reduction. Reflection gives you that space to process your emotions instead of just bottling them up. It's like a pressure valve for your feelings.
Okay, tell me more about this pressure valve. We could all use a little less pressure.
Think about it. When you've had a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, sometimes just talking about it with a friend helps.
Oh, 100%. Just venting can make you feel so much lighter.
It's like that. But with reflection, you're both the venter and the listener. You get to work through those emotions, process them, and ultimately release some of that pent-up stress.
So it's not about ignoring those tough emotions. It's about creating that safe space to actually feel them and hopefully learn from them.
Exactly. And finally, we can't forget about goal setting. Many of us, we set goals based on what we think we should be doing, what society expects, and all that. But reflection helps you get crystal clear on what you truly value. It ensures your goals are actually aligned with the life you want to live.
It's about designing a life that feels authentically you. I love that.
Right. It's like reflection gives you the tools to become the architect of your own life.
So we've covered some pretty amazing benefits of reflection. It sounds incredible when you put it all together. But I have to admit, I still have some doubts.
Oh, what are you thinking? I bet others are wondering the same things.
Well, I'm wondering about those times when reflecting on your mistakes just makes you feel worse. Sometimes I think it's better to just let things go. Dwelling on the past isn't always helpful, right?
You're bringing up a really important point, and it's something a lot of people struggle with, even me. We don't want to get stuck in a spiral of negativity. But, and this is where reflection gets really interesting, it's not about just reliving those difficult emotions. It's about how we approach them.
So it's not reflection itself that's the problem. It's more about the tools we're using.
Think of it like if you're feeling physically sick, you'd go to a doctor, right? They have the knowledge and experience to understand what's going on and help you feel better.
Right. They know what to look for and how to help.
Well, reflecting on challenging emotions is kind of similar. It's about approaching those emotions with curiosity, with compassion for yourself, almost like with a scientific lens.
Okay, tell me more about this scientific lens idea.
One of the sources talked about identifying your emotional triggers. Those specific situations or even thoughts that seem to, set off those negative emotions.
Oh, like dreading presentations at work, for example.
Exactly. Most of the time, these triggers, they just operate on autopilot. We don't even realize they're driving our reactions. But reflection, it helps us bring those triggers into our conscious awareness.
Instead of just feeling anxious about presentations in general, you might realize it's actually the pressure to perform, or maybe a past experience that's causing that anxiety.
Got it. It's like becoming a detective of your own mind. And once you know what those triggers are, you can start to develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So you can say, okay, I recognize this pattern. Now, what are some things I can do to manage it?
Yes. Instead of just feeling overwhelmed, you're empowered to choose a different response. It's like building a whole toolkit for navigating those difficult emotions. Reflection allows you to go back and look at past experiences. Think about what worked, what didn't work, and use that information to handle similar situations in the future.
It all comes back to that personal growth we were talking about.
Exactly. You start to understand why you react the way you do.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you learn how to choose different, more helpful responses.
Yeah.
And that is what builds resilience.
So it's not about never feeling stressed or anxious. It's about having the strength and the tools to get through it.
Exactly. And the more you practice reflecting on both good and bad experiences, the more you develop this emotional intelligence muscle. Yeah. You're more in tune with your own feelings, more understanding of others, and just better equipped to handle whatever life throws at you.
That's amazing. But I want to be clear, this isn't about becoming some kind of unemotional robot, right?
No, not at all. In fact, one of the things that really stuck with me from the research was this emphasis on approaching the whole process with self-kindness.
Self-kindness, yes. That's so important. It's so easy to fall into that trap of self-criticism, especially when we're thinking about past mistakes.
It's easy to be hard on ourselves. But if we could approach reflection with that same gentleness and understanding that we'd offer a friend, that's where the real transformation happens.
It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, always learning and growing. Reflection isn't about judging our past selves. It's about understanding them, learning from them, and using that knowledge to become the best versions of ourselves.
Perfectly said.
Okay, so we've covered why reflection is so valuable, particularly when it comes to understanding our emotions. But now, let's get practical. What are some concrete things our listeners can do to actually start incorporating reflection into their own lives?
Well, the good news is you don't need to completely overhaul your routine or anything. Even small, consistent efforts can make a huge difference.
That is good news. I think a lot of us hear reflection and think we have to, go on a silent retreat or something. So what are some manageable ways to start, especially for those of us with busy lives?
One of the sources had this great analogy about brushing your teeth. You don't spend an hour on it, but those few minutes every day, they make a big difference, right?
Right. Consistency over intensity.
Exactly. It can be as simple as connecting it to something you already do. Yeah. Maybe jotting down a few thoughts in a journal before bed, reflecting during your commute if you take public transit or something.
Ooh, I like that idea. Turning those little in-between moments into mini reflection sessions. But I imagine it can feel a little overwhelming, okay, what do I actually reflect on?
Totally get that. A lot of the sources offer these great guiding questions. Like after a long day, you could ask yourself, what went well today? What felt challenging? What am I grateful for? Even just, how could I make tomorrow even better? Simple stuff.
Almost like a little debrief with yourself.
Right. Or let's say you want to reflect on a specific event, like a presentation at work or a tough conversation. Ask yourself, what did I learn from that experience? Mm-hmm. What surprised me? How did that situation make me feel? And most importantly, what can I take away from this to move forward?
These are great. I'm the queen of letting everyday experiences just pass me by without really processing them. I'm writing these questions down for sure.
And one more tool that kept coming up was journaling. It's such a powerful way to Capture your insights, track your progress, even just notice patterns in your thinking over time.
Oh, I love journaling. It's like having this written conversation with your future self, you know?
I love that. And circling back to what we talked about earlier, approaching the whole process with kindness and compassion for yourself, that's key.
So important. It's way too easy to fall into that trap of self-criticism, especially when you're reflecting on things you wish you'd done differently. But it's about approaching those reflections with the same understanding you'd offer a friend, right?
Exactly. Remembering that we're all works in progress, always learning and growing. Reflection isn't about judging who we were yesterday. It's about understanding that person so we can become the best version of ourselves tomorrow.
I love that. As we wrap up this deep dive, it seems like the big takeaway is that reflection, when we do it right, can be such a powerful tool. It's not about dwelling on the past or stressing about the future. It's about using those reflections to understand ourselves better so we can move forward with intention and purpose, maybe even a little more joy.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the best part is, it's a skill that anyone can learn and practice. It's not about being perfect at it. It's about progress. Start small, be consistent, and approach it all with a healthy dose of curiosity and self-compassion. That's the recipe right there.
I love it. And as always, we want to leave you with a little something to ponder. You know, if our lives are like stories, constantly unfolding, is reflection the tool that allows us to become the authors of those stories? Something to think about as you go out and create your own amazing narratives.
What a great question. And you're so right. We all have the power to shape our own stories. And reflection, that's one of the most powerful tools we have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for diving into this topic with me today. It's been enlightening. And to everyone listening, until next time, remember, your story is yours to write. Make it incredible.